Football season, and that means it's bug season. Heck, who am I kidding? It's always bug season in Texas. And that's why you need Grandeur Pest Solutions in your corner. They're locally owned and operated. They're trained, they're trustworthy, and they have a proven record as they have been in business for almost 10 years. They provide pest control against ants, bed bugs, bees, roaches, fleas, wasps, mosquitoes, rodents, spiders. If it crawls and you don't like it, they're probably going to take care of it for you. Now, they serve all of the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they're locally owned. These two guys have been running this business since 2013, and every year they get bigger and bigger. But you know what they still do? They still have great customer service. In fact, if you get a hold of them, they're usually going to have your quote and your job ready to go within 48 hours. That's pretty good. Now, you can call them for a free estimate at 469-809-1769. You can find them online at Grandeur4, that's the number 4, shore.com. You can also find them on Facebook. Just type in Grandeur Pet Solutions, and we are so happy that they're title sponsor for OutDrank.
Hour, so pick up your step and smile a while.
Apropos for the show, you caught me in live shot making right there. What is up, everybody? It is the great, big, ginormous OutDrank The Coverage Hangover Draft Recap show right here on L4 Media. I do have to ask you, intern Noe, as somebody that loves football and the draft and all that as much as we do, about this time I get tired of it. Like, okay, I've seen all the draft grades. You know, I want to talk about it one more time, but then I want to put the draft to bed for the rest of the year till next year, but especially this year, man. And we're going to get into it. This was a fun draft in a lot of ways, but man, some of the things that they talk about all the time just got annoying.
Well, what exactly were you annoyed by?
The Sanders situation, and not his fault. I'm blaming the media on that one. I mean, we'll get into it first. But first, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you?
Good. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking some Blanton's, some whiskey, straight from Kentucky. It's just a classic whiskey that they make, and it's one of the best. Cool. How about you, buddy? What are you drinking?
I'm sipping on the monkey shoulder that you got for the draft. I'll just put it this way. Do you want to know how well the draft went for us? He bought this brand new and started drinking on it during the draft. That's how we had a blast. That was one of our, we've now done 3 drafts. We've done a Super Bowl. We've done multiple Monday nights. We've done high school together. These live watch parties. We did a college football playoff game live watch party. The draft Thursday night was a blast. We appreciate everybody that we had like 225 messages. We had over 24,995 views. We had a blast doing it, and maybe that's why I'm still probably hungover from it. But anyway, I'm drinking that, and I'm also doing a little bit of just getting rid of it because it was in the freezer. Some a peanut butter whiskey, 99 proof peanut butter whiskey to start. In fact, I'll do that now.
Well, you also were downing a bottle of vodka after a certain point in the first round, but I'm not judging.
Yeah, and I would amend my pick now, which I always do anyway. I didn't like the Micah Parsons pick. Well, to be fair, nobody did in the moment because
Wait, the Micah Parsons pick?
Yeah, remember nobody liked it in the moment.
Oh, in 2020. Okay, I was like, he didn't get drafted last week.
Are you so overrated? No, but instant reactions. But we'll talk about that. But let's go ahead before we get into the Sanders thing and before we get into the suck what worst drafts and the Kroger's Boost program best drafts. Just give me your overall view of what you thought, how the draft. Again, taking the Sanders part out, we'll insert that here in a second. But just your overall view of the draft.
I think almost all the teams did well. I would say at least 25 of the teams I think had a pretty good draft. It varies from great to good, and there's only maybe 2 or 3, and we'll go over them, that they didn't really do what they needed to do to address some glaring holes going into 2025. But yeah, overall, I think everybody did a pretty solid job.
Yeah, I think this was one of those drafts, and I think we've had these for a couple years now. You're starting to see the efficiency and people realizing, and you're always going to have outliers, but for the most part, everybody did well. We can get it, and we'll get into the nitpicking. I think it's such a good draft that some of the ones that you have as your best drafts, and then some of the ones that you have as your worst drafts, you could literally flip them and they make sense. And one of them, I've been very open about Cleveland Browns, and we'll talk about it. But I want to, speaking of Cleveland Browns, I do now want to get into the whole Sanders thing, the free fall. You know, we've been doing these live happy hours every other Monday since the end of the season. Some of those talking the draft, and then we did our big draft, mock draft, or drunk drafting as we called it, the Monday before the draft. And we said this: he's going to fall. Now, I will be fair. To be fair, I did not think he was going to fall as far as he did. I don't think anybody did. But I think at the end of the day, everybody's going to make this about everything that they want, whether it be race, whether it be his attitude, not being humble, whatever. I still think at the end of the day, it comes to he has a good, not great arm. He has good, not great accuracy. And yes, the hullabaloo around him. Do you want that in your locker room? Do you want someone whose dad is a helicopter dad? Let's remember, he has never played for any other head coach in the history of his football playing life. He's always had Deion, his dad, as a head coach. And it goes back to the whole thing with Colin Kaepernick. Did the NFL collude against him? No. What it is teams were like, he's good, but he's not good enough to deal with all the crap you got to bring into it. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it was for Sanders.
It could very well be just the hoopla that surrounds the Sanders family, but I see a guy that threw for 74% completion percentage in college with that terrible line at Colorado. I think if you give him any semblance of quality offensive line play, I think he has the intelligence to really succeed in the NFL, but I get the point. You really haven't seen his arm strength. Like he doesn't have Cam Ward's throwing ability, but he's an accurate guy. I think he's very smart, and I think he can fit in most of the NFL offenses. So I really felt that he was at least the top 2 or 3 quarterback in this draft. And to me, it's just insane that he fell this far. And that's why I really liked Cleveland's draft so much, because pre-draft, I don't think you'll ever get a better value pick at number 5 in the 5th round than
Okay.
Shedeur Sanders.
And so in this show, we will backtrack on some of these picks and retalk them. But I do want to bring up, I agree with you all the way up to them getting Dylan Gabriel first.
Yeah, and
him. That's why. So what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to have our Kroger's Boost top 5. Our top 3 drafts, and then our suck what bottom 3 drafts. And I disagree with you on Cleveland almost from top to bottom. Well, the middles I agree with. I don't like I hate to say I don't like the top pick. I think he's fine, but I don't like the Gabriel and Sanders. That is, and I hate to say this because if it was Green Bay doing it back when they used to do that back in the day, where when they had great quarterbacks, they still would bring in Mark Brunell and things like that. But when it's Cleveland and you have the history of what you've done at quarterback, now you have not only added a third quarterback to a stacked room. Well, really not. Kenny Pickett was never going to be the starter. It's always going to be Joe Flacco if it's his job. And then you then add Sanders, and it's not just adding the Sanders, it's adding all the hoopla, and then you're adding it in with another quarterback. That, to me, just doesn't make any sense.
Well, then you have to add the other factor of Deshaun Watson and the hoopla that comes with him.
He's gone.
Yeah, he's gone, but he's still a part of that team.
Yeah, I mean, he's not. I mean, he's out now. He's rehabbing. Remember, he retore his Achilles. Basically, he's not. They've said he doesn't come to the facility anymore. He's gone. And the owner, by the way, admiringly said a couple months ago, hey, you know what? We took a swing and we missed. That tells me he's gone. The only reason they're not cutting him now is because they have the salary cap. You might as well let him rehab and all that, and you can cut him next year when it's a little bit less dead money. So, but if I would love for Deshaun Watson to be as oblivious as he is to when he's trying to get massage and just show up in like a month thinking, okay, I'm ready for OTAs. Go Browns. I'm the starter, right, guys? Am I the starter? So it's going to be interesting. If nothing else, Cleveland has now become days of our lives for the NFL because of the Deshaun thing a few years ago. And now, and honestly, for all the talk about Sanders and stuff, the guy I feel the worst for is Dylan Gabriel. Will he now even get a legitimate chance? I know they're going to say that he will. And that, it's all, Kevin Stefanski said all positions are open and any quarterback can get it. But I think it was, oh man, what's his name? Safety quarterback. Detroit Lions. Orsolak. He said it best. He goes, what are you going to do? Give off, 25% snaps, 25% snaps, 25% snaps, 25% snaps? Because you're not going to be able to do that. Because nobody then can be good. And you can't say, well, hey, Joe Flacco was there before. Different offensive coordinator. Different system. So it's not like Flacco's, he knows Stefanski and he knows kind of what they want to do, but it's not the same system that he was in, 2 years or a year and a half ago. So that's going to be the most interesting training camp, in my opinion, this year.
I think Shedeur comes out as a starter, and if not, he'll start at least half the season. I still like the pick, but I do agree with you. Getting Dylan Gabriel even before Shedeur Sanders doesn't make any sense to me at all. You could have got Sanders in that role. I guess they just were just going to pass on it until he got to the 5th round, and then it just became ridiculous. And then you heard the rumor that the Eagles were going to try to pick him in the 5th round. So Cleveland had to make sure that they got this pick if they really wanted him. I like Dylan Sampson and Kinshawn Judkins. I think those are 2 running backs that could be day one starters. They obviously in the NFL it's a 2-back system now. So, and Kinshawn Judkins kind of did that last year with Ohio State when they won the national championship. Him and Trevion Henderson did a really good job there. Dylan Sampson was kind of like the 3-down back for Tennessee, and he kind of carried them toward the second half of the season and into the playoffs. I like the combo. I like Carson Schweizinger at linebacker. I think he's going to be a day one starter. And I know Mason Graham, the number 5 pick, is I know where you and I kind of disagree about, like, because you don't like him at number 5. He was projected to be number 5 in most mock drafts to the Jaguars until the trade happened at the draft. So I get your point there, but I like the fact that they were able to also get a first-round pick next year.
Well, you did it, but I had a technical issue, but you did it before we could start. So let's go ahead and start with the Boost Value Draft of 2025. Sign up for Boost over at Kroger.com. 30 days free. You get 2 times the fuel points. You get free deliveries. You get a ton of specials. And just tell them that OutDrank The Coverage sent you. So let's go ahead and get into it. With their pick. The thing that I agree with you on is the thing that they did well is, and to me is almost, and maybe this is why I'm okay going with this as the number 1, best draft in your opinion, is getting that extra first round. That first round next year, especially if you do end up finding your quarterback now and you're not having to use it on a quarterback. And we're assuming that even if the Jaguars, now to be fair, you got me doing that now. But in the South, that first round might be a 15th or 16th pick, but still, that's going to add a lot more firepower quickly. If Cleveland returns to where Cleveland was just a couple years ago, this roster is still talented, and if they keep drafting well, the Browns are going to be legitimate, really, really good here in the next couple years.
Yeah, I really think so. They still have Judy. Now they have 2 really good tight ends, and David Njoku and Harold Fannin. And they got some running backs now, along with Jerome Ford. They have a good competition at quarterback, which I think Stefanski really wants. Let the best man survive. Their offensive line is getting a little bit older, but they can use that extra pick next year to address that. So I like the offense. I think they're going to do pretty well. They still need some help for Miles Sanders on the defensive side. I really thought they were going to go for a pass rusher, Abdul Carter, until they traded with the Jags. But overall, yeah, I love this draft. I think this is good building blocks for next season. I think they'll be much more competitive on offense.
Yeah,
for sure.
I don't have a problem with Mason Graham. I think Mason Graham is going to be a really good player. I think, though, they could have easily then traded down a little more and got Mason Graham at 10 or 11 and maybe picked up another second. That's splitting hairs. And I do like Fannin. We talked about Fannin Jr. all during the drunk draft and during the actual draft. And the fact that he gets to kind of learn from a guy that's a little bit like him. I think Fann's a little bit more fluid as an athlete, but the same style of athletic tight end, I think it's only going to help them as they try to rebuild and go back to where they were in 2019. I still think Joe Flacco's the starter coming out of camp. In fact, I think that the belief system is going to be that unless any of the other 400 quarterbacks that'll be on roster really impresses, you've got Joe Flacco, you've got a roster that can possibly win, and you've got a North that we'll talk about here in a little bit that maybe has taken a huge step back from where they were just last year. But let's go ahead and move on to the second Boost Kroger's value draft pick, and that is the Tennessee Titans. Now, to be fair, if you've got the number one pick in every round, you should do well. But they did, and it wasn't. I mean, if you take Cam Ward off, let's say they started their draft with the second round, they didn't have a first round pick. No, I still think this is a B+ draft.
Yeah, I think they had value the first 2 days, and I really like who they got in the fifth round. Illick, the Stanford wide receiver. I think he's the one that went off on Colorado a couple of years ago.
At like 175, 125 in the first half on 3 catches or something crazy like that.
Yeah. Illick Io Manor, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm really actually big on the edge guy they got, Oluwafemi Oladejo. I think he's really good, and I think he can step in. He might not be Harold Landry the third this year, but I think he'll, by the time his career ends, he'll probably surpass him as far as like talent, production, and that's lofty expectations I'm giving him. But I've seen some tape on him, and he's actually not bad. Like he's really good. There's a lot of potential there. So yeah, that was one of the bigger reasons why I think they had one of the best drafts, along with Cam Ward. The GM for the Titans, he actually came from Kansas City, and I'm not saying Cam Ward is Pat Mahomes, but he kind of makes throws similar where he has to kind of contort himself, throw sideways. He can still throw it deep and accurate, just like Mahomes does, but I'm okay with him being the number one overall pick. He might not be the strongest number one overall pick, but I think, especially you watched him in high school, coming where he came from, where he wasn't really passing, kind of had to prove himself at different places. Incarnate Word, Washington State, and then last season with Miami. The guy works hard.
Oh yeah,
he's the kind of guy you want to build your franchise around. So I love it for that.
No, I totally agree with all that. I think Cam Ward's going to be special. I dare I say I do think the Patrick Mahomes comparisons are pretty legit. One of the biggest knocks on Cam Ward is that he plays hero ball too much. But the Miami coaches said, "Yeah, that's kind of our fault. We kind of needed that," and that's an okay knock to have, as long as when you get to the pros, you learn to adjust. And I want to say this, and I know I'm a Texas fan, but I think that makes it valid. Gunnar Helm is going to be a good tight end in the NFL. Gunnar Helm is I would compare him a lot to Jake Ferguson at Dallas, who, I still think as long as Dak is the starter, Jake Ferguson is a great tight end. We'd seen that in 2023. And I think Helm kind of plays the game a lot like him. He might be a little bit more physical on blocking, but he's at Texas, their system, he wasn't asked to block a lot, but he catches the ball well in space. And then I really like Kevin Winston Jr., the safety with Penn State. He was the guy. We know Dallas doesn't draft safeties, but I was hoping he'd fall to the fifth round and maybe force Dallas's hand on that. I think he's going to be an impact player.
Gunnar Helm is going to learn a lot from Okonkwo, who's a really underrated tight end for the Titans. Underrated. They could be a really good 1-2 punch. And Winston, he's actually, I think, the backup as of right now to Amani Hooker.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a possibility he'll get some play this season.
Look, if Cam Ward comes in and he can be a good starting quarterback from day one, this roster, again, in a division that the Texans have won it 2 in a row, but they took a big step back last year. The Colts were making the playoffs until they weren't in the last 3 games, but there's a lot of 9-8, 8-9 teams. The Titans could bounce back a lot quicker. I know our friend Mario was not happy with the Cam. I wouldn't say he wasn't happy with it. I think he thinks Sanders is a better quarterback. I don't. I think Sanders is going to have a good career. I think Cam Ward's going to have a great career.
Yeah, Cam Ward has the better arm. You and I both like Shedeur. We both know he shouldn't have been drafted in the 5th round, but yeah, Cam Ward has the arm. He has good size, and he gets to throw to Calvin Ridley. Recently signed Tyler Lockett, Traylon Burks, who I don't know if he's ever going to be who they thought he was,
But he can be a good 3.
and A.O. Minor, A.O. Manor, excuse me, at the 4
A
spot.
minor. Wait, what?
Yeah, A minor.
Copyright.
I like the options he's going to come into and be able to throw too. And they drafted Skoronski last season. They've been trying, and they drafted J.C. Latham, so they're also trying to build that offensive line too. I'm seeing them. They got Jackson Slater. He might be able to get a chance to start. Any relation to
I don't know.
Jackie Slater?
I was wondering that too. Jackie Slater. Let me check. I should have checked that before, but I will say also again, a lot of the signings they did last year, those value picks that we were like, why are they doing that now? They're not a playoff team. That could actually help them this year.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Oh no, he's the wrong hue.
Oh, you'd think that would have been something we would have already have looked up.
He
That
played.
is that isn't our bad.
That's our good. All right, let's go to the third value pick or value draft. And you said it best. As I was reading these, I hadn't read your thing yet. I was like, well, what about quarterback? But you said it best. This is all kind of deciding on who's the next quarterback, but it's the Steelers. And I will say this. I kind of feel like the Steelers might be punting this year. If they get Rodgers, okay, yeah, but if they don't, I kind of think they're just going to run with Mason Rudolph and be like, you know what, we might have to be kind of finally taking that full step back. This streak has been great. It's been fun to win a bunch of years in a row, but we haven't won a playoff game in 7 years. Let's just run out with Mason Rudolph, and if we still get in the playoffs, great. If we don't, we'll get a top 10 pick and find our next quarterback.
Well, they're doing a good job by building that defensive lineup. Now, it sounds weird saying that because they have a lot of stars right now, but they're all getting old. They're on the wrong side of 30. So getting Derek Harmon, getting Jack Sawyer of Ohio State legend fame from last season's playoffs. Sorry, Terry. Yaya Black from Iowa. I really think they did a good job. I think Yaya can just, watch from the sidelines this year, or just play, get like 10 snaps. He'll be a starter in the future. But I think Sawyer will get a lot of playing time immediately. I mean, we really know Derek Harmon is going to get a lot of playing time. And I really like Caleb Johnson. The backfield for Pittsburgh is going to be good again. And I think he kind of fits what Arthur Smith's trying to do on offense. You really don't need a star quarterback in his offense. So I guess that's why they got Will Howard in the 6. Will Howard has the size. He can make some throws. I don't know if he's going to be an NFL starter. But I just feel that they have to get Rodgers at this point, because I don't want to go into the season with Mason Rudolph or Will Howard as my starter.
Again, that's why I say I think there's a good chance that they might punt on this season, or just roll out. Not, I know, when I mean punt, I don't mean they're going to give up, but roll out Mason and Will Howard and see if you can get to the playoffs. And if you can't, and like say, if you tank out and end up 5-12, I don't think they'd hate that either. You could kind of finally get some top 5 draft picks that they haven't been able to do in the last few years. And the Pittsburgh way would be to roll out Will Howard and let him be your starting guy at some point.
Hey, you know what city's hosting the 2026 draft, right?
Pittsburgh Steelers. By the way, the Green Bay one was awesome. I know a lot of people were trying to be like, well, Detroit and all of them had more. Yeah, Detroit's like 4 million people, and Green Bay's like 800,000 proper. I thought they were cool. I thought they booed when they should have. And by the way, you and I pointed this out, and it was so funny that others are. Roger Goodell's doing what people need to learn to do when people are hating on you. Just lean into it. Have fun with it. I loved when he came out and they were booing the Bears because it was the Bears pick, and they were booing Goodell. And then he went to talk about the late, great Steve McMichael, and he goes, oh, y'all are going to hate booing this. And then he starts talking. Everybody just kind of shut up like, oh, damn, he's right. Sorry about that, McMichael.
Well, he's also, hey, Mongo McMichael, rest in peace. He was a former Green Bay Packer his last year there. So
yeah, I don't think they count that.
they don't. Yeah.
But no, I appreciate more and more. And look, maybe it's because I understand. And I'm not saying people that hate commissioners don't understand, but I don't think a lot of people do. Roger Goodell's only a mouthpiece for the league. He's not like doing things separate of the league. And people say, well, what about when he punishes? They all accept it. That's why they all accept it. One of the great, most frustrating things that I think people will never remember unless you are a Cowboy or Washington fan. One of the reasons why Dallas had the salary cap issues from like 2012 through 2014 was because in that bargaining agreement, the last year was uncapped. And the league basically sent out a notice saying, hey, y'all better not, even though we can't collude, y'all better not use money in that uncapped. And Dallas and Washington smartly did. And they got popped on the hands. Well, there were talk a lot about, will they sue? Well, no, they didn't sue because they both realized that's just how this works. Sometimes you get slapped on the hand, sometimes you don't. Same thing with the Ezekiel Elliott situation. If he wasn't part of the owner's voice, there would be so much more problems. So people quit hating on him is my point. But I do love the fact now, like when they were booing, he was like, come on, let's go, bring it on. I think that part's pretty fun.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. And I think I told you this. I really like in the first round when he, announces the pick and the players come out and they give him a big old hug and he seems very happy and players seem very happy. And that's like a nice positive about the NFL that people should talk about. Hey, for all the grief you want to say about Roger Goodell and the no fun league, at least there's that. Like there's hope and promise for this young kid.
And I like that he has all the planned high fives and stuff. And as Rich Eisen pointed out, those kids only have to remember the one high five. He's having to remember like 20 of them. So good
Yeah.
on him. All right, let's now get into what the Texans and the Cowboys did. We will start with the Cowboys. And outside of me, infamously now, I've had a couple people joke about it, shotgunning some water while they announced Tyler Booker. In retrospect,
Water.
yeah, it's water. I mean, it's how I live daily. And in that water, is in that water?
Well, we are made up of mostly water, so yeah.
Well, I just meant like vodka's my water. Why did my studio wife say something about the draft show intervention? I'm confused. Outside of the initial reaction, definitely 2 through 7's A+. Round 1, I still think's a B+. He's going to lock in as a day one starter. Tyler Booker's going to be good. I do worry about his athleticism. That was his big weakness. A lot of people said if he'd have just been average athletically, he'd have been rated as one of the best guard prospects in the last 20 years. But again, when you're playing guard, especially in a power system, you're in a phone booth. You don't have to be athletic in space. You need to be athletic 6 inches left, 6 inches right. And I think he can do that. But I still think at the end of the day, wide receiver 2 not at least being sort of addressed. And I know they signed a couple guys. And the Oregon guy, I can't think of his name. I do like him as a UFA. Isaiah Bond's still out there for Texas, but you've got that court issue hanging over, so we'll have to see how that works. But I do think not getting a wide receiver 2 is going to be something that they're going to have to figure out. And it's not on their roster.
To me, that's my only knock of this draft for the Cowboys. I'm not sure what free agent wide receiver is available or UFA that could probably step into that role. I think the current Cowboys roster, I don't really see anyone taking that step forward. Like I don't see Tolbert being anything more than what he's always been. He made some strides last season, but I just don't really see him. He's more of a 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Turpin's more of a 4, like a situational wide receiver, can make a play or 2 every game, which you always need a player like that. And I'm happy he's on our team. But yeah, we still don't have a wide receiver 2. I like the pick of Jaden Blue. I was, giving you heck. I was tasseling your feathers. I don't know what the phrase is, but
whoa! I did drink. Oh, you already did.
no, I think he'll fit in nicely with the Cowboys backfield, which currently has Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. So yeah,
so from Clemson. Look, I think if this draft goes well by week 8, our 2 running backs are the 2 guys we drafted now, and then you've either got Sanders and Williams either spelling them or maybe even off the roster, or at least one of them. You're going to want to keep through. Well, I mean, I guess Deuce Vaughn's still technically on the roster, but I don't think they got an RB1. But also, you got to remember, Shoddy at Seattle, it wasn't it wasn't RB1s. It was a bevy of backs. And I have no problem with the bevy of backs as long as some of them are at least good enough. And I do think they at least on paper put two really good players. Blue is the next Tony Pollard. He's fast. He's smallish. He had some fumble issues, but I think a lot of that's one of those. I think running backs, that's one of those things that kind of just becomes a thing, and then you get through it. And then the Clemson backfield, Mafia, he's power back. Like he is, and he's not slow, but he's like 230. He's that guy. This is Pollard and Elliott, and then Rico and Elliott if it works right.
Yeah, Moffat, I think he'll be a great short yardage back. He'll make the roster. I don't see how he can't. I think he just fits a role that they really need because Miles Sanders ain't going to be that guy. I'm not sure what's really left with Javonte Williams. I hope he has something left, but
I like the Miles Sanders signing. I still think he has a little bit left if you're not asking him to do 20 carries a game.
Yeah, I really think going into the season, Javonte Williams might not make the roster, but I think Sanders will. I think he might start the season, and Jaden Blue will be getting at least 10, 15 snaps. Moffat might get a couple of snaps a game. But I like our running back roster right now. I think it's good enough. My big thing is, and why I like Tyler Booker was, you paying Dak $60 million, and I'll say this with a lot of the teams that we haven't talked about yet. If you're going to pay the quarterback all that money, that must mean you value them a lot.
Yeah.
And if you value him as a top ranked quarterback, then you got to protect him. You have to have faith that if he has protection, he can make a Jalen Tolbert a number 2 wide receiver. Like he can get the ball to anybody. So I like that Tyler Booker signing for that reason. Now we have a lot of Tylers along the offensive line, and I'm okay with that. But I was going to say, off topic, there's a lot of Jalen's that got drafted in this year.
Yeah, you can tell that the Jalen's and a lot of Shamars, you know, you can tell where the namings were 20 years ago.
Yeah.
That means here in about 10 more years, we're gonna have any white offensive lineman will probably be named Tristan or Trident. Jackson, we had a Jackson Dart. You're going to start getting all those, but yeah, I noticed that too, and I meant to say that to you. I want to say this: I think where Dallas won the draft is 2 through 6, or really 2 through 5. We talked about Blue, but Shamar James, speaking of, he's going to step in and he might be a starter, even with Overshawn coming back. You know, Dallas is basically cleaning out the linebacker room. There's not one linebacker unless Kendricks come back, but even then, I don't want Kendricks coming back getting 25 snaps a game anymore. I want young, fast. Even if Overshawn comes back, even if he is almost where he's at, he's going to be on a snap count for most of the season. And I think Shamar James can come right in. He's athletic. He fits what Matt Eberflus does. We talked about it during draft. People remember Anthony Hitchens, who started with Dallas, became a very solid, not quite all-pro, though I think he might have made a second-team all-pro one year in Kansas City. Not quite all-pro linebacker, but a very good linebacker for Dallas. And then he was there for the Chiefs for their first Super Bowl win. And I think James can be that way. But, dude, right now, Shavon Revel, he is the starter, CB1 right now going into camp.
Yeah, the only linebacker that's guaranteed to start, I'm not talking about Overshown right now because I think he'll come back sooner than we think from his injury, but I would say Kenneth Murray is the only one that's going to be guaranteed a spot.
Trade over from Tennessee.
Yeah, very solid linebacker. Huh?
I like him too, and I like how Eberflus. So you know, with the former DC, you had 4,000 linemen. Of course, everybody kind of does that anyway. The way that Eberflus does his is he likes multiple linebackers. He loves the matchups. He loves you bring in your run guy here, then you bring in your speed guy, then you bring in all that. And the way you do that is you have to have a big linebacker room, and maybe no one is perfect, but everybody does something really, really good. Now, I do think Overshawn, if he can ever stay healthy, I legitimately think he could be an all-pro linebacker. But I think, you know, James and Murray and the rest of that room, I feel way better about this defense than I did before the draft.
Yeah, it's wide open. I initially think James might excel at special teams, but because the linebacking room is so wide open, there's a possibility you could start. He might, like you said, start day one. And because of Trayvon Diggs switching over to the secondary, because of Trayvon Diggs' injury, Ravel Jr., he could slide in opposite Deron Bland, have Kyrie Elam be the nickel, the guy we got in the trade with the Broncos. When you still got Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker in the secondary, I kind of like it. I like the secondary. I like the competition opportunities at linebacker, and I think one of the top 10 steals of this year's draft was getting Donovan Ezeraku in the second round, a really good edge rusher from Boston College. On our drunk drafting show, we predicted he would go in the first round. We later changed it to the Packers, but yeah, he's really good. I love this draft. Outside of the lack of wide receivers, I like this draft.
Well, and he is basically everybody's calling him. He steps in and he's DeMarcus Lawrence's replacement. I mean, they play the same type of game. He's not going to get you. I mean, if he does, we'd love it. He's not going to be the type to get you 15 sacks. He's the type, and I always use it. I know, but it's just you go with what you know. He is this defense's Tony Tolbert to Micah Parsons, Charles Haley.
Consistent, reliable, available. Love it.
All right, now let's go over to the Texans, and they decided to. Wow, this keeps getting really loud in there. They decided to basically punt on their first pick, and we find out later that reports are. And I don't think this is rumor. I think the Houston Chronicle guy was talking to the staff. They had tried to trade up with Dallas to get the 12th, and I think they would have taken Tyler Booker. Because that's Houston needed some interior line help badly. And if there's one negative on this draft, and I think it's a really solid draft. I don't think it's a great draft. I don't think it's going to be, oh my God, this is the next dirty six or whatever. But I think they got some really solid guys with a couple of diamonds in the rough type. But the one negative for them as an offense still is they haven't really shored up the interior offensive line.
Yeah, the only lineman they picked on the offensive side was Ursery from Minnesota.
He could start day one, or at least be a swing tackle that gets a lot of snaps. He's a solid, just one of those. He's not going to be special, but he's going to be out there and he's going to do his job.
They needed someone to replace Tunsil. I think they found their guy, which is good. He might be a left tackle, or let Cam Robinson stay at left tackle, then move him to right. But yeah, I think that was a good move. They need to. This is the same discussion I had about Dak. CJ Stroud, he's eventually going to get a lot of money. He's a franchise quarterback. Protect him. If you protect him, he'll make some of these wide receiver 3s, 4s, and 5s a step better than they were. He's going to maximize the talent around him, but you got to keep him upright. You got to keep him protected. He got sacked a lot last year, and he lost his top 3 wide receivers throughout the season. So he needs some help.
Well, and he got a couple wide receivers. That Jalen Noel, I think, is a steal. He was one I was kind of hoping Dallas would hook into as we were talking about him. They also got a running back in Woody Marks. I don't know how much he's going to get now, but that's smart. Joe Mixon was good early, kind of faded late. Part of that might be the line, but I also think it's Mixon's age. I mean, Mixon's been in the league a while, folks, and we all know how running backs work, man. When they go, they fall off the map. But I do think it is interesting, and I know they faced injuries, and even when Nico come back, he's kind of been an injury issue. Tank Dell, we don't know what his status is going into next year. But it is interesting that a team last year that was flush in wide receivers took 2 wide receivers in their first 3 picks. That shows you how fast this league moves.
Yeah, it moves fast. I just realized Houston, I think, drafted half the Jalen's that I heard get picked.
It's Tyler's in Dallas and Jalen's in Houston.
Yeah. I'm not really sure about Graham Mertz. I don't think he'll really see any action. They just needed a quarterback, I guess.
Body.
Yeah. Luke Lachey, I don't know much about him, but he's a tight end from Iowa. Right now they have Dalton Schultz, starter.
Luke Lachey's a Dalton Schultz starter kit. A little bit more physical because Iowa's going to ask you to be more physical. He's going to block more, but he can catch the ball.
Hey, Iowa has a pretty good history of drafting or getting their tight ends drafted. So
yeah, because they don't know anything. They don't know how to. They don't know how to recruit speed. So so in their system they think tight end is wide receiver 1. But anyway, so that's the Houston pick. All right, now before we kind of go down and run down through all the teams, except for the teams, of course, that we've talked about, let's do. Hang on. Let sure I get to it right. Let's do our favorite part of the show, and that is.
It's time for the Suck What? What sucks? Well, this sucks. That sucks. Oh, the week.
Suck what?
That is brought to you by Suck What. Just go to suckwhat.com. You get the crawfish culture in Cajun style. They have everything from shirts, caps, cups. They also have great crawfish boil gear and utensils and equipment that you're going to need. So the first, and we're just saying three. We're not ranking which one's the worst. We're just giving you three, and this just happens to be the first one that I pasted. The first one is the Bengals. Now, again, as you said, nobody had a terrible draft tonight. There were no, I don't even know if there was any C drafts. These are close, but again, I think this is one of those years, and this is kind of how everybody thought this draft was going to be. There wasn't a lot of, oh my God, top end generational talent, but there is a lot of depth in it, and we're seeing that. So even though we say these are the bottoms, these still aren't the worst drafts that you could have had. But the Bengals, as you said, the Bengals didn't do enough to address their defense. And you're right. I mean, they started off, and you know, I like Shedeur Stewart. His measurables are unmeasurable. I mean, he's amazing. He is a freak. The problem is the on the field production has never been there. But if this is a guy that could be a bona fide star in the National Football League.
Yeah, he has the measurables. He has when you look at him, he looks like a stud. But can he do it in the NFL? That's the big question. It would make me, it would give me anxiety just to pick him at 17 if that was a Cowboys pick. I'm almost feel like you might be wasting that pick because you just don't know. But maybe the Bengals know something we don't. I almost feel this signals that they will bring back Trey Hendrickson somehow, some way. I'm going to contradict myself later when we talk about the Lions, but I
don't think they bring him back unless he's taking a pay cut. I mean, the things that their front office has said, that I can't think of her name, that's the president, basically like, yeah, we'd love you back, but you're going to have to take a pay cut. So I think at the end of the day, it's up to him. I know he's shopped his around and nobody's biting on the trade. But again, most people are like, well, we'll just wait and see. If you get cut, then we'll be able to swoop in and pick you up. I would feel way better about this pick if he stays, not only because he's still good, but he is that type of guy that will take Stewart under his wing and say, okay, let me teach you how to play this position.
Yeah.
I do like Demetrius Knight, by the way.
I was just going to say that.
Carolina. He's rangy. He can hit. I like Barrett Carter, their linebacker for Clemson. I see what you're saying about, because we all joke that they should draft only defensive players, but I do think we are now in an era, and some of it's analytics and some of it's data. But just like with Dallas going, okay, so supposedly Dallas really did like McMillan. I still don't understand why they didn't like Matthew Golden as much, or maybe it comes down to they just felt Booker was better for them than Golden. But Dallas basically said, look, once McMillan got drafted, we had to change our strategy. But I appreciate if you don't feel that the guy that you need a position. They need wide receiver. Cincinnati needs defense. But if you don't feel that there's someone there to get, then draft the best available. And if the Bengals stuck to their draft data, whether we agree with the data or not, then I think they did what they wanted to do. And that's why they didn't get nothing but defensive linemen. But they got two inside guys. Basically, they'll be guards. And it's not like Cincinnati's offensive line has been the best offensive line ever over the last 5 years.
Yeah, if you're not going to really improve your defense much, then at least protect the best player on your team in Joe Burrow. You give him his little fun toys to play with on offense, but you still need to protect him and keep him upright. Cincinnati's had that problem ever since Joe Burrow got into the league. So yeah, getting some interior alignment to protect him up the middle. I like the Dylan Fairchild signing. I think he comes from Georgia. I think he'll actually be a starter this season. But
yeah, I agree.
They're still going to struggle on defense, man.
Are we not seeing the Dan Marino career happen right here? Gets to the Super Bowl very early, loses. Of course, the Bengals lost in a more heartbreaking fashion, but loses. And then he spends the rest of that career chasing that, and it feels like the team, for whatever reason, doesn't quite ever give him just quite enough. They give him just enough to be there, but they don't ever give him enough to be, better than that. But don't forget, they did bring back Bengals legend Samaje Perine. He'll get 1,000 yards, right? Right? I do like him for what he's going to do. But I see. I agree with your thing. I think we all expected a little bit more defense, but I will say if they didn't stick to, I mean, as long as they stuck to what their process was, I like the two interior guys, and I like Tajah Brooks. You and I were talking about with the Cowboys. I don't think he's a starter. I think he's kind of can be a plotter. But again, in that north, when it's 25 degrees and you're in Cleveland, you kind of want a plotter back that you might need to turn to.
Yeah, the winters in Ohio are not kind. So yeah, having a plotter with an improved offensive line can go a long way for the Bengals. Maybe a really good offense that controls the clock can turn a bad defense into okay.
All right, let's go now to the second suck what. We're not going to play that. Go to suckwhat.com. The Dolphins. The Dolphins, again, not a bad draft, though. Again, this is one of those that I have seen some draft grades, give it not great, but good. I like Kenneth Grant, even though maybe that's why I have an issue with Mason Graham. I'm PTSD as a Cowboy fan with Michigan defensive lineman, but I like Kenneth Grant. He's a, I think he is a less athletic Mason Graham. Maybe that's why they work good together. I like Jason Marshall Jr., the cornerback from Florida. He kind of got lost in that Florida. That's just really weird. I'm coming around with you on Ollie Gordon. I didn't realize how beat up he was this past year. So if he can kind of get clear of that, the problem with injury with running backs, it feels like once you start getting leg injuries, they just kind of keep going. I personally like Quinn Ewers as the 7th round pick. So I think overall a solid draft. So what is it about this draft you don't like?
It's not that I hate it. I just feel like they had so many issues and they were never going to be able to address them all. They addressed some. Getting the guard was helpful. Losing Armstead to retirement didn't really help them because, again, like with Dak, like with Burrow, you have Tua as your quarterback. Protect him, and
Well,
they have.
not like Dak. Dak has been injury prone. Burrow hasn't outside of the knee injury. And of course, they shut him down one year, but I think that was more precaution. Tua's like one concussion away from playing on Veggie Tales.
It's so crazy with him. So I'm okay with one of the getting the guard, but I really think they should have done a better job of protecting him. I think they probably should have got more defensive players, if I'm being honest. I know they got a lot in the middle rounds, but man, I still feel like I look at that roster, I'm just not impressed right now. There's so many issues. Achan, their starting running back, he gets hurt all the time. I hope Ollie Gordon can step in and fill in a role because I think he can provide a lot for that offense, make it more well balanced. Tyreek Hill, I guess he's walking it back, and he's going to come back to Miami for one more season.
And you and I always felt that was going to happen. He was spouting, and I think a lot of it was frustration, and rightfully so. You had them making the playoffs. A lot of people had them kind of last year as the Sheik, could make the Super Bowl, and they felt.
I did.
It's kind of funny though. What you didn't what?
No, I had them making the Super Bowl.
Oh, was it? You did have them, so that's right. I couldn't remember if you had them making. I knew you had them making the playoffs. It is kind of interesting that Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel come from the same coaching philosophies, and they both tend to pick injured talent. And I get it. You want to take that talent, but as you and I always say, and it really has become more prevalent during the salary cap years, the best talent's availability. And it is interesting, though, how both of them tend to, because, we always joke about San Francisco's always walking wounded, but, the Dolphins are kind of like that as well.
Yeah, they are, especially 2 years ago when they were contending for the division and they lost them last weekend. They were doing so well, and then one by one, all their players started getting hurt, especially on defense, and that really affected them and it had them sliding a little bit.
All right, let's go to. Hang on, I gotta wait for this to move. Help me out, Restreams. I don't want to turn on the mic. Let's go to our final suck what, and this is the Lions. You and I talked about this mock draft night. We know the Lions because of their head coach and who they have talent-wise, but they're getting two complete new coordinators and almost completely different. I think there's 2 coaches that come back, not counting Dan Campbell. Again, I don't hate this draft. It just was very okay.
That's a good way to put it. I liked the first round pick.
Oh yeah, I like Tyleek Williams. He's going. I think I'm not trying to say he's going to be a Warren Sapp or for Lion fans in Namondaga Sue. I think though he's athletic and he can play a 2-gap system.
So to me, their defensive line did improve because now you have Hutchinson coming back. You have DJ Reader, who I still think is really good, and you have Tyleek Williams on the other side at tackle. So yeah, but I don't think they're expecting Marcus Davenport to show up and get double-digit sacks, live in the backfield. So this is one of the reasons why I think they might be trying to get Trey Hendrickson from the Bengals, maybe trying to work out a trade with them.
The one thing you can say about Davenport is, and I know he was there with Jordan Cameron of the Saints, but still on the back, and I know he's still playing, but still on the backside of his career. It'll be interesting to see Davenport line up with a guy like Hutchinson on the other side, who is taking all the double teams. I could then see Davenport having a bigger year. And I want to bring up another name outside of Hendrickson from the Bengals, Jadeveon Clowney. Reports are that, he's still in the league, folks. And reports are the Pirates. That'd be really weird if the baseball team traded him. That the Panthers were looking to move him for something, and if they didn't, he might be a June 1st cut. I could see him being a side character in a Lion pass rush.
No, that would be good. That would probably help because you're not asking him to be prime. You just need him to be a good veteran.
Has he not had the weirdest career? Because he technically has been a draft bust. That dude, I did not realize he never has had more than 5.5 sacks. This is a guy that many people, because of how good he was in college, thought he was the next Lawrence Taylor, DeMarcus Ware, Shante Carver. Oh, no, that's what he is now. No, actually, he's turned into Kavika Pittman because Kavika Pittman actually had a pretty solid career with Denver after the Dallas stuff. But that is one of those dudes that he flamed out so quick, but then he has dug out a 12-year career.
And once he got out of he had a bunch of injury issues early in his career. Once he got through that, he actually became pretty solid. Even the years that he became Pro Bowler and All Pro, he was getting recognized because he was creating pressure. He might not have been getting sacks, but he was getting that backfield.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I do want to point out one thing as we finish the suck what 3 worst drafts. I can remember a certain old draft when the Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, and everybody's like, what are they doing? And now it's like, oh, that's brilliant. So we do have to give them credit. Since and I don't know how much Dan Campbell has anything to do with it, but since the Dan Campbell era, I think they've done a good job of drafting. When we think everybody else thinks it might be not a bad player, but an interesting pick, I think they've done a good job. All right, so here's what we're going to do to finish out the show. We're going to go down, and I put it alphabetically. We're just going to go down and we're going to go through all the drafts, all the teams' drafts. And I just want you to pick out, Noe, and we'll skip the ones that we've talked about exclusively. But I just want you to kind of pick out a player or two that you like in a draft or something that you wish they would have done better, or you get what I'm saying, right?
I mean, with Arizona, they were a team that I almost wanted to put in the top 3. I think they nailed it with the first 2 picks. Will Johnson's injury last season slid him. He's a top 10 player, but getting Will Johnson in the second round, that's outstanding.
Yep, I totally agree with you there. I think that I like Nolan. I like Will Johnson. Again, Will Johnson had injury issues. I like Jordan Bunch, the defensive lineman in Oregon. Arizona came in. They kind of did what I guess we thought the Bengals would do. They came in and said, we need to rebuild our defense, and they did that all the way through. And I like Hayden Conner, their Texas guard. He could play guard or center. I don't know. He kind of reminds me of Connor Williams without the overhype. And to be fair, I love Texas, but I was telling you back then, I don't see why everybody loves Connor Williams. And Connor Williams has been a solid guy. I think that's what Hayden Conner can do. For Atlanta, they didn't have a lot of picks. I like him, though. I love Jalen Walker. Man, you and I were so worried that we're going to take A&M Stewart. Not because he could be bad, but again, that just felt like the most Atlanta thing to do. Take a project. Jalen Walker, in my opinion, is not a project. I don't know if he can ever be a 18 sack guy, but that's a dude that I think you're going to put on there, and he's going to get 10 to 12 sacks every year.
A lot of people say Atlanta was too aggressive going, trading back into the first round to get Pierce, but they don't understand. Atlanta really needed pass rushing help, and getting two premier edge rushers in Pierce and Walker, that's a win for me. And then if they create the pressure, they drafted secondary players, and Bowman and Xavier Watts and they're ball hawking safeties. So they're going to be able to get those redirected passes, get the interceptions. And you got Jesse Bates back there too. So Atlanta's defense to me has improved drastically overnight.
All right. So here's one of the reasons why they went back in and got Pierce. People don't understand. A first-round draft pick, you get as a team a fifth-year option. So if you can trade up and not give too much capital, you would rather take him at 26 and basically get that extra year on a rookie contract than save draft capital and get him at pick, round 2, pick 2, 3, 20 or whatever, but then you only get a guaranteed 4 years with him. I like that. I always want that. That's why, everybody talked about, like if Sanders busts off at quarterback and he's amazing, Cleveland's going to have to pay him a year early. And that year can be the difference in a lot of things. So I personally like it. And also I'm a big believer. That's the one thing Dan Quinn, I helped change me fundamentally. I want as many edge rushers as you want. I don't need 2 guys taking 40 snaps. Give me 4 guys and they're all taking 10 snaps and they're always fresh. So I like them. I like Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman. I think those might be your next 2 starting safeties. I think truly Atlanta took the biggest step inside their division than maybe any team.
Yeah, and they won 8 games last year. I can see them definitely getting to 10 wins in 2025.
All right, let's go to Baltimore and just another Baltimore draft. I like Starks. I like Green. Of course, Green has the sexual assault thing over his head. We don't know what that's going to do. I think people in all the Colorado buzz forget how good LeJohntay Wester is as a a wide receiver. I think he's going to fit in well. It's just that it was a very typical Baltimore draft.
My favorite pick is in the 6th round, kicker Tyler Loop from Arizona.
You think they're saying something to a certain somebody?
Yeah, I think their legendary kicker Justin Tucker, former UT alum, is gone.
We'll see. All right, so let's now go over to Buffalo. Hey, look, Maxwell Hardison, one of the most interesting nights of the draft. That dude sat right at where all the players come through to go onto the stage and hugged and loved on every player getting drafted in the first round. His personality and just how infectious it is going to play so well in Buffalo. That dude is going to be a leading member of the Buffalo Mafia.
It wouldn't surprise me if they make him one of the captains of the team next season. He was so positive, and he didn't care when he was going to get drafted. He was just happy to be there. He was congratulating everyone that got picked ahead of him. I love that personality. I want someone like him on my team, and he's also talented and fast. I'm also impressed with his buddy, the tackle they got later on.
Deion Walker?
Deion Walker. He's 6'7", 331, and he's going to improve that rush defense immensely.
Hey, look, Buffalo's drafting well right now. From where they're drafting late in the rounds, they're getting guys. Landon Jackson, I covered him when he was at Pleasant Grove High School here in Texas. That dude, he at one time the ceiling was higher, but he's still a guy that you can center in at the edge and let him focus. They lost Von Miller. They're kind of getting old across. Ed Oliver, what, in his year 6 now? I mean, so they're getting.
He's older than that.
Yeah, I think maybe 7. But they're getting a little older in the line, but he's a guy that's going to fit in, as you said, Walker. I like Jordan Hancock, the Ohio State cornerback, played the slot mostly, but they traded Elam to Dallas, so he kind of can fit in right there. Again, just a really solid draft for Buffalo. For Carolina, A good draft. I don't know. I know Dallas wanted him, but I told you I didn't know how I felt about McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona. I think he'll be solid. I think Trevor Etienne might end up being the steal of the draft for them. Dare I say he might even have a better career than his more highly touted brother. I like Cam Jackson, defensive lineman for Florida. Mitchell Evans, like you talked about earlier about Iowa. I always trust in most Notre Dame tight ends. I think Mitchell Evans fits right there. So a good solid draft for Carolina.
And Jimmy Horn's kid from out of Colorado, they got him in the
Oh yeah.
sixth.
That good point. I forgot about that. And another wide receiver. Again, everybody said that, Sanders only had Travis Hunter. Colorado had some really good wide receivers, folks.
Yeah.
Chicago, dude, I love the Loveland pick. I think they made the right decision going with him over Warren just because of what the Bears want to do. It allowed, Cole Kmet. I like Cole Kmet, but he's more of your go out and make, slot / tight end. This allows him to do that, and Loveland can block and also catch. But I think the steal of the draft is somebody that you was really hoping would go to Dallas, and that's Luther Burden III, the wide receiver out of Missouri.
Yeah, I knew he'd go in the second round, so I was kind of hoping, but Chicago had the same idea, and they had a higher pick than the Cowboys. So, good for them. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler probably this coming season. I have a lot of. I think that guy's really good. Loveland, he's just a very solid. Like there's no flaw in his game, and he's underratedly athletic. Like you look at him, you don't think it, but then you see it on the field. And he was the best offensive weapon for Michigan last season. They had some struggles on offense. So yeah, I like what the Bears did. I like what they did in free agency. They shored up the offensive line. So I think Caleb Williams is going to have everything at his disposal to be successful in year 2. But yeah, good job on the Bears. They still need to address they still need edge rushing help. They need to get to the quarterback, but overall, I still like what they did.
All right, we already did all 3 of these. All right, Denver. I know a lot of people were shocked by the Jahdae Barron. A lot of people thought they were going to go heavy running back. I think they feel like they can figure out the running back position. Again, it's weird how 2 years ago everybody was talking about how undervalued, or the running position was dead, and now everybody's like, well, why didn't all these teams go for running backs? Well, because they think the running position's dead. I do like Barron, the quarterback for Texas. They're basically recreating no-fly zone of the 2012 to 2016, or really 2018 Broncos. And at the end of the day, defense still matters, folks. And I think they had a really solid draft.
I think so. I don't really see a flaw in their game right now. Excuse me. Sorry, I thought I had to sneeze. Yeah, I can't think. Oh, sorry.
There it is.
Yeah, needed to come out. They still need to get a wide receiver. There was that rumor during draft day or leading up that Cortland Sutton would get traded. It still could happen, but I guess right now they're going to go into 2025 with Sutton and Marvin Mims. And
I would do that. I don't see
Bailey.
the point in trading him. You've got a year left on his deal. He's 29. He had a great first year, kind of fizzled off. But, you could point to quarterback issues. And then last year, after it took a few weeks, you really started to see what Sutton and Sutton, quite trick about his name, Sutton and Mims could do with Bo Nix at quarterback.
Yeah, and he's still going to be protected by that defense, and the defense is going to be stronger than it was last year. RJ Harvey, watch out for him.
Yes.
Like they have a starter in McLaughlin, but Harvey, his last 3 years at UCF, he was averaging well over 6 yards per carry. So he's a big play threat. I think that makes their offense a little bit more exciting. But I still, just like with the Cowboys, I'd say their one flaw in this draft, they really didn't address the wide receiver position. Maybe Pat Bryant out of Illinois, who they got in the 3rd round, might end up being that guy. But as of right now, I don't really see that. But who knows?
All right, we already did Detroit. Green Bay, they take Matthew Golden from Texas, their first round pick. Think about with all the wide receivers that have gone through in the last 20 years or 23 years. Their first round wide receiver pick since Javon Walker. And I love that when it was announced, he didn't even try to hide it. We're picking our first wide receiver. and I like Golden. I think Golden, and again, I admit, when you see a guy enough, you either overlove him or overhate him. I absolutely love Golden. He's fast. He's got good size, not great, but he'll go over the middle. I think Matthew Golden is one of those that's going to be one of the top picks of this draft when we look back 10 years from now.
I mean, outside of Golden, two of my favorite picks the Packers got were Savion Williams,
Hey, where's he from?
Marshall, Texas.
Wait, where?
Marshall, Texas.
Marshall, Texas. Oh, no, he's special. He's a guy that he's going to be one of those that you're going to use in the red zone. He's tall, he's athletic, he's not a burner, but he doesn't also get caught. But what a lot of people might not remember was he got kind of famous at TCU because they kind of started running the Wildcat around him. And he went on this insane stretch where, like, out of 12 snaps, he had either a first down or a touchdown in every snap. He's that type of physical wide receiver that you're going to need in a division that the Packers play in.
Yeah, I think he'll be a difference maker. So they got two guys that could be now. I don't think Savion Williams is going to be one, but I think he'll be very versatile. He's going to make that offense way more dynamic. To me, their best steal in this whole draft was their 4th round pick, and you're going to like this again, from UT, edge rusher Baron Sorrell.
At times he takes over games. At times he disappears. But again, in the NFL, you find that middle consistency. He has a high motor. He has a great first step. I think the thing he needs to work on is he's a little stiff. But again, that's that kind of things that you get. And Green Bay's known for developing pass rushers. Green Bay's also known for developing flash in the pan pass rushers that then disappear. But yeah, I do. I agree with you. I think this is a guy that could easily step in and next year have 8 sacks and then go on from there. I also like Colin Oliver, the linebacker from Oklahoma State.
Overall, I wish they addressed the edge rushing more, but I think Sorrell is good enough for now, and they kind of made their offense more dynamic. That takes more pressure off the defense.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, we did Houston already. Now let's go over to the Indianapolis Colts. A lot of people were C+ing the Tyler Warren, and I don't get it. I think that was and I know the idea is, well, he doesn't have a quarterback to get him the ball, but okay, you sometimes you build your quarterback up by giving him great targets, and I think Tyler Warren's a taller Dallas Clark.
Yeah, and it's the same number. Both were 44. Yeah, I love that the Colts got him. I wouldn't say their draft was fantastic, but I think it addressed the biggest need, which was getting a tight end to help Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, whoever's going to come out the camp as a starter. And I really like 5th round pick DJ Giddens out of Kansas State, their running back. I think he'll be a good addition. I think he'll make the roster and be a good backup to Jonathan Taylor.
Oh, I like you and I were joking about the Jadon Blue. If Dallas would have taken Giddens, I'd have been perfectly happy with that as well. To me, they're 1A and 1B. Giddens is a little bit bigger. Blue's a little bit faster. Blue catches the ball out of the backfield better. At least as of now, Giddens has a little bit better ball security, even though, as you and I talked about, that sometimes gets a little overrated. I think he's going to be really good in a system with as great as Jonathan Taylor is. He's 1 year older, and Taylor has gotten to that point where he misses a game or two, but mainly you're going to be able to give Taylor some snaps off and let Giddens kind of be that 3rd down, 2nd down, and long guy.
Honestly, they probably should have addressed their offensive line a little bit in this draft.
That's a good point.
Yeah, they lost their center and right guard to the Vikings.
Travis might step in as a starter. I mean, he had I think he started 45 college games. I mean, those are those guys that you always read about and you hear about, and then they end up playing 10 years in the NFL. They never win any all pros or anything, but you also can never seem to get them out of the starting lineup.
Hey, no matter what, he at least has the best offensive coordinator in football. Jim Bob Cooter.
You just love the name. I do too. All right, let's go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to say this right now. In a vacuum, I feel 1,000% that this is an A+ draft. ... until you add that they gave up next year's 1st round. I love Travis Hunter. I think Travis Hunter is special. And you could make the case that maybe Jacksonville says, hey, we're going to play him at both positions, so we technically are getting 2 1st-round picks. But that is the only real negative I have of this draft is you gave up a 1st-rounder to move up to get Hunter.
Yeah, and as much as you and I both like Travis Hunter, I don't know if it was worth it, but they got they needed something dynamic in Jacksonville, and Duval.
We're gonna have to get that as a sound clip.
I like them getting Brian Thomas Jr. last season. He's a wide receiver number 1. So Hunter doesn't have to be a wide receiver 1 for Jacksonville. Like, yeah, he'll be a full-time cornerback. He'll get maybe 10 snaps on offense. Just his presence on the offense is gonna make them better because the coverage is gonna not know what to do with him. He's very dynamic. He's very good. Um,
Well,
yeah,
I like the Caleb Ransall second round pick because I think Jacksonville just drafted their 2 starting corners.
and they got a good veteran, Jordan Lewis from the Cowboys. So
Who's a great slot, maybe the best slot defender in the NFL.
hey, I would not disagree with that. So, yeah, I like everything they did. They might have kind of like with Atlanta, they might have given up too much, but Hunter can probably be a good return on their investment.
You know what? If Hunter gets some 700 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns, then you make the case that they basically did draft 2. And I do think at least early in his career, they're going to give Hunter snaps at offense. What's it hurt? I mean, look, I know the injury thing, but Travis Hunter doesn't get hurt. I mean, that's the thing about it. That dude plays. He is a gamer. And we talked about it during the drunk draft show, during the live draft show. I think at the end of the day, he will be the one that I think he's going to be everything that people think he is. I hate saying this when he's not very, I think at the end of the day, he's a Hall of Fame talent. I think he's going to revolutionize a lot of things. So I think if all that plays out and Ransall works at cornerback and you continue and Trevor finds his way again, and maybe we see them with Etienne finally figure that out. I don't know. I just think Jacksonville, and again, I keep saying this, in an AFC South that is very winnable, I think Jacksonville might take a really big leap back to being in the playoffs.
It's a very winnable division. So, yeah.
All right, let's now go to Kansas City, and Kansas City drafted like Kansas City did. Simple starters. Josh Simmons walks in day 1. Omar Norman Lott will be a guy that will give you some issues on offense, plug in the center. Ashton Gilliard, a great solid edge rusher, though he can be inconsistent, but you're not going to ask him to do a lot. And watch out for Bradford Smith, the running back from SMU. Just a good solid draft. Nothing spectacular, but drafting from wherever they're at, I think they did a good job.
Yeah, they're in a position where they have to. There's a few guys that have to pay a lot of money, so Veach and company, they have to be really creative in the draft, and they have been. They kind of converted on the fly from being a pass or offensive only team to having probably a more of a defensive oriented team, and it's through stuff like this, getting good O-line play to help with the running game to kill the clock. I love the Josh Simmons pick. The best thing about it was they traded with the Eagles. The Chiefs were 31 in the first round. The Eagles were 32. They flipped those picks and they got an extra 5th round pick. So that to me is amazing. And then like you said with Brashard Smith, he runs a 4.39 40. So you got him in the 7th round. I think that's a pretty good steal to me.
And you know that Reed will use his speed. He will figure it out. And let's not forget, folks, and I know Rashida Rice has that thing looming over him, but at worst, I think he's going to get suspended 6 or 7 games, and he might not even get suspended now. That's been so long ago. I think the NFL has kind of learned, and I think if they could redo the Ezekiel Elliott, they would have done the same thing. Just drag it out till everybody forgets and then just move on. But Patrick Mahomes, don't say Pat, sound like his son, dad who won't fight Joe or Rocker. But Patrick Mahomes has been very open about we are throwing the ball downfield more. And with somebody like Smith who can catch the ball out of the backfield, Andy Reid will find a spot for him, or at least packages for him to work.
I have a late breaking news, sir.
Okay.
The Browns are signing wide receiver Deontay Johnson.
Okay.
Well, I guess they're trying to improve the wide receiver locker room. He kind of had a struggle last year because
is that the guy you're okay? Again, this is the most Browns thing. They've become the Raiders. They just take on all the crap players that have talent but can't. Deontay Johnson kind of. I don't know what happened in Pittsburgh. And then he goes to the Ravens, and then he goes to the Panthers, and then the Ravens picked him back up simply because they could literally get the draft pick off of him. It felt like he might be out of the league, but hey, give him a chance. He's got the talent.
He has the talent. If he's in the right environment and is motivated,
The
maybe.
Browns. Look, the Browns are either going to continue to be goofy. At least they're not the Browns of 15 years ago, or they're about to pull the wool over all of us and do something amazing. And I'm personally rooting for that. I want the Browns in the Super Bowl.
Hey, you and I love them, and we consider them one of our favorite teams in the AFC.
All right. Y'all can't see, but y'all can hear. Having some drinks. Las Vegas Raiders. Look, once the Jaguars decided they weren't going to, and they moved up, that had become the hot pick for the Ashton Genty. It felt natural for him to the Raiders. I like him. I like Jack Betch at wide receiver. I like Darian Porter at cornerback, and I like Caleb Rogers at offensive tackle. I honestly would tell you this: if it was up to me, the Raiders would have had one of the best Kroger's Boost drafts. I thought they drafted for need, but I didn't feel like they reached either.
Hey, this is the first year with GM John Spytek,
You
great
mean
name.
Pete Carroll?
Yeah, and Pete Carroll as head coach. So they made a splash. I almost felt that they weren't going to address wide receiver for some reason. I guess it's just me. But they're the Raiders. They do love receivers. So getting Jack back from TCU was good. He'll pair well with Jacoby Myers. Getting Ashton Genty, man, that's just awesome. And the most important thing, like I always say, you got to build the foundation of your team through the line play. And like you said, getting lost my train of thought. Getting Caleb Rogers and Charles Grant is a good move for the future. They might not start now. Maybe maybe Rogers might start, but
I think they're both future starting tackles.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And that's long-term planning. I like that a lot.
And I really want Tonka Hemingway to do good just because his name is Tonka. I think that's awesome. And Cody Lindbergh at Minnesota, linebacker, he's a tackle machine. He's one of those guys. Look where Zach Bond came from. Look at where he was and how he kind of just floated, and then all of a sudden he came off last year because there was so much talent around him. Cody Lindbergh's one of those tackle machines that you could end up seeing as a starter. But a really solid, again, I feel like we keep saying this over and over. It's a broken record, but good job, NFL. A really solid draft. Here's another one. This is one of those obvious picks that's very obvious, and this is the one thing I think the Broncos will rue not getting Omarion Hampton is because Omarion Hampton went into maybe the best fit for him outside of a Dallas is the Los Angeles Chargers in that power running game. And then, they added a guy that I think could be a very much diamond in the rough in Trey Harris. Really, really solid draft for the Chargers. They can't say they're not trying to give all the weapons they can to Justin Herbert. And then, there's this guy nobody's talked about other than, his dad's a pro player, is Orlando Gaston II, tight end from Syracuse. I think he could be a big player in the system.
When Kyle McCord transferred to Syracuse, that's when you kind of started hearing about Gatson more because McCord and Syracuse, they went more pass heavy. So they had a pretty successful season. They upset Miami, essentially knocked them out of the college football playoffs. So I like Gaston there. They needed a tight end. And then I also like edge Kyle Kennard. He might be their replacement for Joey Bosa, who went over to the Patriots. I top to bottom, this is, like you said, a solid draft. And this is year 2 of Jim Harbaugh's regime with the Chargers. I think they kind of addressed some of the issues that affected them in the playoff loss to the Texans. So they're a fringe AFC West contender. The AFC West got tougher. Denver looks good. Chargers look good. Raiders are improving. They might finish 7-10, 8-9, but they'll be one of the better 4th place finishers in the NFL. And Kansas City, they just keep retooling.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's go to the Rams. Very solid and unspectacular again. They're a team that they don't have a ton of holes, but they have a lot of holes that are about to happen. And it still feels like they're kind of just stashing guys and hoping they last, but they went with Terrence Ferguson at tight end in a system that loves tight ends. Again, I don't know if
a system that didn't get much production from tight ends last season, so that was a great pick.
Yeah, I agree. And outside of that, I think they've got some really solid guys.
Yeah. Let me look at their roster real quick. Yeah, what was I gonna say? Yeah, with the Matthew Stafford situation, that was always kind of looming. Like, are they going to address that quarterback situation this season, or are they going to wait until next season?
Yeah.
Were they going to do a cornerback? Are they going to trade for Jalen Ramsey? What they did in this draft makes me feel like they're going to be pretty good this season. I think they're going to be a top 10, maybe make it to a conference championship game this season. They've done a really good job building back up their defense after the retirement of Aaron Donald. I like almost this is a broken record. I like almost everything they've done, and they might get Jalen Ramsey, and they're going to be even better on
He might
defense.
come back there.
Yeah, protect Stafford, build for the future, have a future contingency. Because right now you have Jimmy Garoppolo and Stetson Bennett as your backup quarterback. So, getting Devontae Adams in the trade, having Puka. Man, this is almost 2021 LA Rams. This looks like a pretty lethal team.
Again, their thing is, can everybody stay healthy?
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Minnesota. We already talked Miami. Minnesota didn't have a lot of picks. Donovan Jackson, not wow, but I think a solid pick. Other than that, they just didn't have a lot of picks. I can tell you, I don't know enough. I know Felton's a solid wide receiver. Everybody else feels like just a plug and play guy. Not spectacular, but not a terrible pick. Draft, I mean.
Yeah, Donovan Jackson kind of just highlights it for me. Protect the young kid. McCarthy already missed last season with an injury. He comes in as a starter. I like that they traded with the Seahawks to get Sam Howell. He'll be a really good backup for the Vikings. And look, Minnesota has so much talent on that offense, so I don't think they're going to miss a beat. But they get Darisaw back from his injury. They drafted Donovan Jackson. I think their offensive line play, as long as they stay healthy, are going to make them a championship contending team.
All right, let's go to New England. Sorry you can't see the name, but that's because they had so many picks and they started it off. To be fair, man, I ain't lying. Their top 3 picks, maybe even add Woodson, A pluses. Will Campbell, amazing. Travion Henderson, I was really hoping Dallas would get him. Kyle Williams, a wide receiver at Washington State who helped Cam Ward explode year before last. Jared Wilson. I mean, dude, you trust Georgia offensive lineman. And then Craig Woodson, a rangy, athletic safety. And then don't forget Joshua Farmer, who began the year, a lot of people thought was going to be a first or second round pick. I think New England, this is one of the best drafts, I think, from top to bottom that they've had in a very long time. And they even took a kicker.
And they even took a kicker.
I mean, it's New England. And Bill Belichick, like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You can kick the ball? Oh, yeah, that's what Adam did. I always wondered what Adam did around here. Ask my girlfriend. Email her and let me know.
Got him. Yeah, the Patriots. I mean, they were a contender to be on our top 3 drafts for this season. Season going into 2025, they needed so much. They had a lot of capital, both salary cap wise and draft capital. I love Will Campbell's speech after he got drafted. That's a guy just like with Harrison. You want to play for them.
Yes.
You want them to be on your team. And then getting depth at running back, Henderson's great. Kyle Williams,
Henderson's your day one starter. I don't think he's depth. I think I like Ramondre Stevenson, but Ramondre Stevenson is a plotter, and that's not a bad thing. I think Henderson's the guy you're going to want to give 18 carries and 4 catches a game out of easy, 24 to 25 touches.
But again, this is a 2 running back league, so you definitely still need a second really good running back. At Antonio Gibson, he does pretty solid in special teams and in situational scenarios. So yeah, I think they got 3 really good backs. They got Stephon Diggs, who I think has a good year or 2 left him in. Kendrick Bourne, now Kyle Williams at wide receiver. So the wide receiver group has improved. They still have Hunter Henry at tight end. Man, I'm looking at this. Their line play. I think their line, because they got Morgan Moses. They have Will Campbell now. They have Garrett Bradbury, Jared Wilson as the backup, so future starter. I hate this. Is it scary to say? Maybe New England's back.
The only thing I think is holding them back is they still got some depth issues, but they're if everybody stays healthy. And look, I've said before, I thought Mike Vrabel wasted some good Tennessee, but I also acknowledge that, he also brought them out of the hell that they had been in for what it felt like forever, and took them to an AFC title game. I do think he's the perfect guy to start all this. And I think he's going to find roles for these guys. All right, let's go to New Orleans. And it's funny, New Orleans drafted the guy to protect your quarterback for 10 years. And then maybe drafted the quarterback for the next 10 years. The number 2 pick is going to be the pick, though, that decides if this draft's good or not.
Yeah. Tyler Shuck rhymes with something else. Should they have gotten Shedeur Sanders in the second round?
I don't think so.
Now, Tyler Shuck's 26, which age doesn't matter right now because quarterbacks can play a lot longer than they used to. He played in college for a long time. I liked him at Tech. I really liked him at Louisville. He'll probably be starting this season. I love the fact that they got Kelvin Banks. They needed to get younger everywhere. So they were already kind of at a deficit, but they did almost everything they needed to do. I like Brockton in the third round. He'll be a good defensive tackle in this league for a number of years. They just need to get younger and pick a position. Yep, get that person. So they were it's kind of a positive thing because they can go into the draft saying, hey, best available. As long as we didn't draft that same position in the prior round, let's just get them.
Well, and also Derek Carr came out today and said, "Yeah, I had a shoulder issue, but he's like, yeah, I'm not going to be, I'm going to be back. Like, I'm not going to be gone, and everything. So if that's true, if Tyler Shuck is allowed to sit a year or two, look, Kellen Moore helped develop Dak Prescott. Kellen Moore, whether you could say he developed Jalen Hurts, he at least knew what to do to make Jalen Hurts work in that offense. So, I think it's great. I love Kelvin Banks. I love Vernon Broughton, the defensive lineman for Texas as well. Again, Texas this year, the most they've ever had drafted, 12 players. I know we keep just repeating it, but a very solid drive. Devin Neal, a running back that 2 years ago probably is a top two round pick. Kansas kind of took a step back last year, but he's got a lot of talent. I like what the Saints did. I also like what the Giants did. Again, why they went back up to get Jackson Dart is especially for a quarterback. If you think he's your guy, and you can go up into the first round and get that extra year, especially when there's a good chance he'll sit the first year, you've got to do it. I had no problem with the Giants moving up to get Jackson Dart.
I thought when that trade happened that they were going to get Shedeur, but it didn't happen. I like the Giants draft. I think they had one of the best drafts as well. And I was kind of surprised because I thought Joe Shane, Brian Daboll were going to go into this year trying to make a big splash for the short term just so they could keep their jobs. But these picks they made seem to be more long-term oriented. Of course, they got Abdul Carter. Darius Alexander is also a really good defensive lineman. That their line just got younger, got more aggressive. They're gonna have one of the best pass rushes this year, most likely, with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns alongside Abdul Carter. I still like Cam Scatterboo. He might be, I don't know if he's too slow for the NFL, but he's a bulldozer, and he came on last year with Arizona State, almost created an upset in the playoffs against Texas. And Dart has the talent, but when you saw him in games where he was getting any kind of pressure, he just seems like one of those typical quarterbacks that just hates pressure a lot. And I know you're going to say every quarterback hates pressure, but he performs very poorly when he gets pressed.
Yeah.
But you can't deny his arm strength. You can't deny the success he had at Ole Miss. So good move. Hopefully it pans out. And I hate to say, because they're a division rival, really good job.
Oh, I think they've improved themselves immensely. And I will say, I think Cameron Skidaboo, I think if he's going to live in the NFL and survive, he's going to have to turn into a Bill Bates, Steve Tasker special teams guy. But more importantly, we talked about they needed a sexy draft. They didn't make the sexy picks, but they got a guy who will instantly become a fan favorite in Skidaboo for the Giants. So I think that in and of itself is worthy of that pick. And as you said, he does have some talent. All right, let's go to the Jets. again, rinse and repeat, a really solid draft. I think they drafted a tackle in Mimbu that you can set aside out there and put him out on the tackle for the next 10 years. I like Mason Taylor, the LSU tight end. Probably wasn't used enough at LSU. They got a lot of athleticism in this draft. I don't know if a lot of these guys have high ceilings, but I don't think they have low floors either. I think they just got really good, solid players, which is something the Jets still need to do.
Oh yeah, and they're trying to build a team and give their new quarterback Justin Fields an opportunity to succeed, and I think they did that. Membo, he'll be the starting right tackle. They got Vera Tucker at right guard, Tippmann at center, Simpson left guard, Fashanu, who they drafted last year at left tackle.
Hell of an offensive line, man.
They have a good line now.
And they're all
That's
like, I think they're all 28 and under, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. Uh, the best thing they did was wait on tight end until later because getting Mason Taylor out of LSU in the second round is a really good value pick.
Mm-hmm.
He addresses a need because the Jets needed someone, and Justin Fields excels. Remember in Chicago with Cole Kmet, he excels with a good pass catching tight end, a big physical guy. And then also in the third round, they got Azariah Thomas, cornerback out of Florida State.
He
He'll
had a
be
first round grade for most of the year.
pair him against with Sauce Gardner on the other side. Going to be one of the top half cornerback duos in the league.
All right, let's go to the Philadelphia Eagles. F the Eagles. They did it again. Their first two picks are guys that will immediately step in and be impact players. Jihad Campbell, it works so well, and this is what Philadelphia is doing so well. And I know he's a linebacker, but they're going to be using him as a run-stopping edge guy. They're drafting defensive front guys because they understand that we're not going to re-sign anybody for big value. That's not what we'll just keep drafting them. And they got another one. Then Andrew Makuba, the Texas safety who started his career at Clemson. I covered him in high school at Austin LBJ. This dude is the real deal, folks. Look, we can joke about it because they're the Eagles, but you even look at Ty Robinson at defensive line. He's the guy, if they just give him 10 snaps a game, he's going to be really, really solid. They got some really good offensive line depth with Cameron Williams, the offensive tackle for Texas or out of Texas. Miles Henlin, the tackle from Michigan. An A-plus draft for the Eagles, man.
Yeah, another great draft. Like Jihad Campbell somehow slid all the way to 31.
Well, because of injuries. He was him and what's his name, the cornerback from Michigan.
Will Johnson, yeah.
It was never about the talent. It was about the injury issues. And to me, and of course, it always depends on the injury. To be fair, but like with the Cowboys taking the corner in the third round, it's an injury, but it's a torn ACL in September. Like, it blows my mind that you get so short-sighted. People need to remember, even with first-round picks, you're not just drafting them for that first year. Jihad Campbell, if he takes the time to recover and he only is averaging 5 snaps a game while he gets, the Eagles aren't going to miss that. They didn't draft Jihad Campbell to help them defend the Super Bowl in 2025. They got him to play in 2026, 2027, 2028. That's that foresight instead of the short-sightedness.
I will say that I wish Kyle McCord, who they drafted later on, would be on a team where he could actually start this season. Because I think he has a lot of great talent. You saw what he did at Syracuse last season. They had the best passing attack in all of college football. He was a big reason why. And I kind of wish one of those teams that really needed a quarterback would have taken a stab at him.
I still don't think the Eagles 100% trust Jalen Hurts. And I know, well, he won a Super Bowl, and when in the other Super Bowl loss, he played well. He has been, even last year, again, what Kellen Moore did so good with them is they retooled that team and basically became a power run team. And I think if Jalen Hurts in any way takes a step back, McCord, I'm not saying McCord will step in and be great, but I think that's why they drafted him. And also they might feel at Jalen's next contract, it might just be value to move on. I think that's what's going to that's what makes Howie doing it the right way. It's knowing who to re-sign, who to sign in free agency, and also who to let go, even if it fan sentiment or just, what he's done for the team, it might hurt, but you're doing the best, keeping the ball rolling forward.
Yeah, it's so hard. Belichick did it so well during
Yeah.
his prime years with the Patriots. So I mean, Howie Roseman's doing it just in a different way.
All right, let's go to San Francisco. I really thought you would have them in the suck what. This was again not a terrible draft, but a very okay. You know, I like their first pick in Williams Collins, the defensive lineman from Texas. He's good, but Texas is one of those, like a lot of teams, that they rotate so many guys at defensive line. Sometimes it's really hard to know how good somebody is or how good they are because they're the fourth guy that this poor guard has had to face in the last four possessions. You know how that works, and you do it in the NFL too, but you just can't quite do it like you do in college now. But the rest of the draft is very just I don't know, man. I don't know. San Francisco is just in a weird spot right now.
I like when they got Michael Williams. I like that the first 5 picks were defense because that's what they really needed.
Crazy to
And
think that worse their defense was just 2 years ago.
they lost almost all their stars too. So, but they got Robert Saleh back as defensive coordinator, and I'm pretty sure he gave his stamp of approval on all the first, all those first picks they made. I like the day 2 starters that they or day 2 players that they drafted. Um, I think we have to circle back to this draft in a year or two because I think most of those players are going to be key starters for the 49ers in the future. We just won't see it right now, but they're going to get every opportunity to. So I actually had them in the upper half in my. I didn't like rank 1 through 32, but they were one of the better drafts when I sat back and thought about it because they need a lot of young talent because they're going to have to pay Purdy because everything they did it signals that they're going to pay Purdy. I don't know if he'll take a discount.
You don't think Curtis Rourke, the Indiana quarterback, is going to be stepping in? Well, I mean,
Hey,
we all told you not to
congratulations on a playoff
Purdy.
appearance. Congratulations on a playoff appearance, Indiana. And Rourke, you were very solid. I, I mean, he might have a better chance than Mac Jones to be the starter for the 40 or if we have for the 49ers. Um, and Jordan James, it just seems anyone in Kyle Shanahan's offense is gonna excel. So I think he'll be just fine. Slot him in right behind Garendo. McCaffrey will probably get hurt again. So James will get some looks. Um, yeah, I think in a couple of years, let's look back at this draft because I really think this is the draft that's going to start a new age for the 49ers.
All right, let's go to Seattle. You and I called it. And not that like we're the only ones, but Gray Zabel, great pick for. I like their first three picks to be honest with you. Seattle and let's add in the fourth because you have said it. I know other people have argued. You think Jalen Milroy is a diamond in the rough, and if he turns out to be, then this Seattle Seahawks. Well, that's the big thing. Every 5 years, you redraft a draft 5 years ago. Seattle's, I think, at worst 5 years from now is going to be a B plus. I think it could easily be an A plus plus.
Yeah, to me, him and Malachi Starks were probably the best safety prospects going in. But Nick Emenworry, he's big, he's a playmaker. Getting him in the second round is great value. The Miami tight end Elijah Arroyo, I think he's going to slide in and get a bunch of looks this season. Uh, yeah, I like everything they did, man. Like I agree with you. Gray Zabel was the most obvious. Like he just fit that team perfectly. He's gonna as long as Sam Darnold stays upright, this team is gonna at least get 10, 11 wins.
Yeah.
Kind of like they did last season. So
No, I agree. And in a division, it feels like San Francisco takes a step back. The Rams are 3 injuries away from not being there, and then Arizona, we don't know what they're doing. Seattle feels like they've made the quickest kind of mini rebuild, and could very well. Again, the wide receiver position is going to be the big issue. Can they find explosiveness in the offense? But if they do, I think Seattle's a playoff team.
yeah, I mean they got JSN, they got Cooper Cup, they got MVS. They're hoping Tony Horton might develop into maybe a good special teamer, maybe a guy that can get 10, 15 catches this season. Arroyo might be the guy that they're expecting to really make this offense dynamic. You saw what he did with Cam Ward at Miami last season. I like that they addressed the guard situation because they had two pretty solid tackles. They just needed some help up the middle, and I think they got it with Zabel. So, yeah, this is going to be a pretty solid team and another great draft.
All right, let's go to Tampa Bay. I like the wide receiver pick. They didn't have to make it, but they did, and I think it was a wise move. It reminded me very much of when Dallas took CD Lamb. They didn't have to have him, but it was made sense to take him. And I kind of feel that. I also like their cornerbacks they took in the second and third. Again, this isn't a wow you draft, but I think four of these guys are going to be long term players for them.
Yeah, you made me come around to the idea of them drafting a wide receiver in the first round. You make a good point. Chris Godwin, he gets injured a lot. Mike Evans, relatively healthy. He was injured last year, but he's going to what age 32, 33 season. So they have two really good and excellent wide receivers, and then they also got Jalen McMillan as well. So adding Egbuka for the future is a great move. What else did I like about this draft?
Basically,
Oh, yeah,
they're transitioning from Evans and Godwin to McMillan and Ibuku, and you can use them all four together. And then it wouldn't shock me if this is the last year for Evans and Godwin at Tampa Bay.
I agree. And another couple of things I liked were moves they made on the defense. David Walker, just because of the combine and because of the Senior Bowl, his stock went up. They got him in the fourth round. That might be a steal when we look back at this draft in a few years. And then they got help with their turnover or lack of creating turnovers. They only had 7 interceptions last year, and they got some day two cornerbacks, Benjamin Morrison, Jacob Parrish. They are ball hawks. They can create turnovers. So couple that with David Walker, I think they're going to improve on defense a lot more than what people think. And the run defense was fine. It was the pass defense they had issues with.
Exactly. All right, let's finish up with Washington. Again, we already talked Tennessee. You know, Washington is in that precarious situation where last year, of course, we all know they made a Cinderella run to the NFC title game. You've got Jaden Daniels. You've got some foundations on the offensive side, even though Scary Terry is starting to get a little older. But they had so many guys that had their best year ever, and history has told us that that doesn't usually replicate. We'll see. I think with this draft, I like the offensive tackle from Oregon, though I think they reached. I think he's somebody you could have gotten with the 61st pick. I think sadly for them, this is going to be a mostly forgettable draft class, and a small one too. To be fair, they only had 5 picks.
I mean, I really like Connerly because they'll probably make him a guard because they already have Tunsil, they have Wiley.
Yeah,
So I think protect your franchise quarterback, Jaden Daniels. I know you hate me saying it, but they already have Tyler
oh, okay.
Biadasz. They have Tyler Biadasz at center. They already have Sam Cosmi. So yeah, slide Connerly over um, to left guard maybe,
And then when Tunstall's gone, you can kick him out to tackle.
and they also have Debo Samuel. Don't forget that they got
Oh yeah,
him
he'll
in.
play 6 games. That's good. He'll be great. Eight
I,
games.
I hate that you might be right about that because he is one of my favorite players. I love
Oh, I
those.
love watching Debo. But to also to be fair, last year his efficiency went to shit, and that wasn't just injuries. I don't know, maybe if just sometimes when you have a team that everybody thinks is a Super Bowl team and it starts to go downhill, people just end up, not that they try, but they just lose focus. But he had the most drops, and he's never been the most efficient pass catcher, but he made enough of them. Last year it was terrible, so there is a possible that decline continues.
You know what though? He might not be Debo Samuel, but they also got a wide receiver in Jalen Lane,
Yep.
and he's a Swiss Army knife in the sense that you can line him up at receiver, running back, and he can probably contribute immediately to special teams. So I think that was a really good pick they made, and he could eventually be a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 over the next few years.
That it.
I think that's all 32 covered
Think
in
that's
less than
all
2 hours.
32. Sorry, in less than two. Actually, we did pretty good. I didn't really know how long this show was going to go. All right, so this will be our last show. Well, we've got the 1985 and the 2003. Is it 2003, 2004? I can't remember now.
Oh, 4.
Oh, four. Yeah, I don't always think of three. I'm editing those as we speak. Our look backs. I'll be doing a Texas two seam this week. Our next, we didn't do this as a happy hour just because the way YouTube works. If we'd have done it as a happy hour, it's really hard to find if you didn't watch the show originally. And this is more of a draft recap. Our happy hours are more of a instant reaction. But we will be back on our next one on May 12th in 2 weeks, a live happy hour. We'll just be talking whatever the big news is there. But man, I think the overall, and again, this could all change next year, but the overall thing I feel right now is that NFL teams are starting to kind of learn how to draft consistently. And maybe you're not going to hit on every pick, and some of the picks will be bad, but then you make those up with really good late. It feels like the late rounds is where they're finding better players now.
Better players. Some of these guys, they just played in bad systems, or them and the coach didn't get along. But that's what Senior Bowl is for. That's what Pro Days for, the Combine. You can prove yourself, just like with David Walker. He shot up after those. So just because your college career wasn't really all that, you have other opportunities to showcase your talents.
Yep, I think that's totally right. All right, we're going to check our Patreon out, patreon.com/L4 Media Company. After I edit the 85 and the 2004 shows, we're going to put the raw ones up. So after you cancel us for some of the things Noe says, we understand, but at least you'll be able to go to our Patreon, and it's $3 a month, folks. We're talking about less than a cup of coffee for a month worth of shows. We're going to start pumping out some more of those, so please check that out. I think that's it, my friend.
Sounds good, man. Had a good show, man.
Love you.
I guess we could do those clips, the draft preview clips on there.
Yeah, I guess we can put them up there.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a little